let's get painting. It only took me 5 months to get a second video in this series. I didn't forget about necessarily, just didn't collect my thoughts for you all, but here I am. Today I will be painting in my sketchbook with the Holbein acrylic gouache. Now I got this set as a class requirement for a color theory class I took in school over a year ago. I haven't really touched them since then though. I find that if I want to use gouache, I would rather use, I guess regular gouache, not acrylic gouache. And even then, I would rather use watercolors over that. But I am trying to move out soon, so I want to kind of use supplies I don't really touch. Like, try to use them up, but in like interesting ways, so I can like experiment with supplies I don't use as often. And then that way, if I don't like them, I don't have to move them because they're all gone. I don't just have like this set of acrylic gouache, I also have lots of just like acrylic paint. And like different kinds of pens that I don't really use. I also have like an ungodly amount of watercolor paper. It's one of those things where I will try several different brands, even though I know there's a brand that I like and I know what that brand is, but I will still get other kinds of watercolor paper if I think I might like them. So I'm gonna try and do my best to go through some of my supply. The first thing I'm painting in my sketchbook today is actually an NPC from the campaign, the IGM. Her name is King Cinnabar. When I was swatching all of the colors, because it was kind of rainbow, it made me think of the Pirate Kings from that game, because it's like a pirate-themed Forged in the Dark game. But the original 6 Pirate Kings were all named based on like colors of the rainbow, so like Cinnabar being red. And those bright reds that I swatched at the beginning kind of jumped out at me. That, and I think I accidentally put a lot on my palette, so I was like, why not? I'll go for it. If any of my players are watching, I will say I don't think this is like her canon design, quote unquote. It's kind of just like a version of her. If anything, she probably has like a more elaborate outfit, maybe like more of an armor look. I did give like a leather chest plate, but I feel like she if any of the Pirate Kings wore armor, it would be King Cinnabar. I do like the length of the hair quite a bit and kind of how I did that. I'll be honest, I haven't really thought a lot about her physical appearance. She's only come up once or twice in the game, but the way I have thought about her appearance before, I know, is through her relations, because one of the player characters is her sibling. So like I kind of thought about how it looked and then translated some of those elements to her, but again, not the most thought into this, kind of just playing around with the paint, which I really struggled to mix. I think part of this is because I have almost zero white paint left. And in gouache, white and black is actually really important. I am used to the world of watercolor where you don't need to worry about that, you just add transparency, but that affects the quality of the paint. Something I really like about acrylic gouache is that when you get the consistency smooth enough, it just is a flat layer of color, which I think is a fun challenge, because it's not really how I think about like watercolor or any kind of painting I do, really. I like having kind of blended, uneven layers of color, but lack of white paint did make it difficult to lighten up in too many places. I used most of it, I think, in Cinnabar's shirt, and then the little itty bit I had left on my palette for her eyes. But yeah, I guess a little bit of a me update, because this is like also about me and not just about this painting. I'm trying to move, as I mentioned, so like I'm in a weird transition period in my life, both just generally and in my art. Because like moving, also the world is in a place right now, but that's probably not news to anybody watching this. I'm at a point in my art though where I kind of want to shift to trying to sell it in an online store, which is something that has been like a dream or a goal of mine for a long time, but I'm in a place now where it would be also very financially beneficial if I could make that jump, but it is a lot of investment, and I don't know if I necessarily have the following to like quote unquote justify that. It's a whole can of worms to get into, one that I think would be fun and beneficial to me, but it is still a can of worms. But keep an eye out on that. Maybe I will end up doing some online store stuff. I'm also in the middle of a couple of projects, which means like I can't really post about them yet because they're not finished, but I have a tabletop game I'm writing. I have to redo some of the core mechanics of it because the probability didn't really shake out in the way that I was hoping it would, so I kind of have to relook at those mechanics. But the basic structure is there. It's called Feud, so look out for that when it's ready, but it was actually inspired by like a narrative thread in this Pirates campaign that is kind of going unresolved because of life stuff, at least momentarily. But weirdly, I think the game would also be very good for like sports anime. I'm also working on a zine right now. It is very like narrative focused. It's based on a larger idea that I've kind of been toying with for a while, but rather than tackling it at what I think would be its best like format in terms of medium, which is kind of inaccessible to me at the moment, I'm starting with a little zine, but I'm having like a weird world building crisis with it. And I want to embrace that rather than just like ignore it and wave it off, but it means thinking about it more, so I'm kind of at a stuck point with that. I'll be a little bit vague about it because I do kind of want it to be a surprise, but sometimes you realize that modern printing technology does not exist probably in your fantasy setting, and you don't want to just wave it off as magic. I think it'll be really cool if I include that. It just means I have to redesign some of it. Oh, here's my bird. My big fun bird. I had a lot of like that bright yellow tinted red. What is that color? I want to say it's vermilion. That might be wrong. But I had that like lighter red, basically. I had a lot of it left on my palette, and I don't know, sometimes you just want to do a big old pretty bird. Since it's acrylic gouache, it does not reactivate after it dries, which is beneficial during painting, but as someone who likes to reuse and blend a lot of colors, it's not ideal, but I wanted to use as much of what was left on my palette as I could. I also ended up experimenting with how I lined it. So for the painting on the left of King Cinnabar, I had initially wanted to do it in pencil, but because acrylic gouache is like super matte and pencils tend to be kind of shiny, it ended up having like a weird visual texture to it, so I tried lining it in paint, which I think was fun, but not really the look I was going for. I thought about it while I painted my big old bird friend, And I ended up using my Crayola crayons. I use them in my sketchbook a lot. I think they're just like a fun tool to have around because they're kind of very simple and it requires me to loosen up a little bit. But I really like how the texture of the crayon looked with the gouache. I ended up using a purple because I like how it interacted with both the reds and the yellow. It kind of gave the look that I was hoping for. I just wish I lost my like little craft knife, so I couldn't sharpen my crayon, which is a silly thing to say, but I couldn't get like a fine point, so I couldn't do as detailed of line art as I had wanted. But I still think the texture is really fun, and if I was going to paint with this again, which I should because I have a lot of paint left, I would use the crayons again and kind of play with that some more. But yeah, thank you so much for watching me kind of paint and ramble. I'm hoping to sort out my schedule a little bit more and post more, but also sometimes life happens, so who can say? But thank you for watching. There's all the buttons and things you can interact with. I'm sure you're familiar, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye!